permission. She's given me permission, but I just keep
We
thinking.
haven't
No, the
seen that.
19th is not the name.
At what point will they remember?
We haven't seen that.
Thank you very much. It's time for our regular meeting to begin. Welcome. It's our January 24th, 2019 regular session. And this evening we will have is Pastor Martin here?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, okay, cool.
Invocation by Senior Pastor Todd Martin, Liberty Worship Center, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Smith.
Absolutely.
Would you all please rise with me for the invocation and pledge? What happens when you take your glasses off? I can't see that far away.
Let's bow our heads. Father, we just thank you so much for an opportunity to come together. And Lord, I pray for unity among our city. And I pray for our nation tonight. Lord, that you would heal our land.
Yes,
And
Lord.
that you, Lord, would just bring grace and mercy to us. And so, Lord, I pray that you would touch this council tonight and all of the leaders in this city. And we bless you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Pastor Martin and Councilman Smith.
Yes.
May I have roll call, please?
Vice President Wallace?
Here.
Councilman Urschel?
Here.
Councilman Lauterbach? Councilman Smith?
Here.
Councilman Dean?
Here.
Mayor Mays?
Here.
President Engel?
Here. Thank you. At this time, we have an opportunity for approval of minutes, our January 10th, 2019 regular session. May I have a motion, please, for approval?
So moved.
Moved by the mayor, seconded by the vice president. Any discussion or question on our minutes, please?
Councilman Dean, I just had one question. On the motion you made last time, I thought I'd written down you were referencing a 4-foot setback, but it said 3 in the minutes, and I wasn't too sure if I misheard that or not.
It was 3, yeah.
It was 3, okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Any other question on the minutes, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye?
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Engel?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We have no scheduled special presentations this evening, so we will move on to audience comments. Anyone wishing to address the Xenia City Council, please feel free to do so. Step to the podium, provide us your name and address. Limit your comments 4 to 5 minutes, please. Seeing no one come forward, we will move on to old business. First item is Resolution 2019-A, a second reading, determining to proceed with the renewal of a property tax levy in excess of the 10 mil limitation and to submit the question of renewal of the tax to the electors at the May 7th, 2019 special election, introduced by Vice President Wallace.
And I now move the approval.
Thank you. It's moved for approve. Second, please.
A second.
Seconded by Councilman Smith. Any discussion or question on this motion, please?
The only question I would have is not on the motion itself, Mr. City Manager, but have you done anything or have you moved in the direction of pulling some thoughts together on how we're going to ask some citizens to participate in the promotion of this levy to make sure that we give maximum information so that people don't understand that it's not a tax increase and that they understand that it's absolutely necessary because it's an integral part of our budget.
Yeah, in fact, I think I can update you on a conversation as of yesterday, and I think your point is spot on. These are dollars that go to our core critical services, things like fire, police, parks, road maintenance. So these are dollars that are essential to our operations. And it's not a ton of money, but $500,000, that ballpark, is extremely important to us. Our margins continue to be very tight. So the finance director, myself, and PR coordinator, some other staff members met yesterday. We'll, of course, coordinate an effort on behalf of the city to provide public education materials once the issue number is known. Clearly, with staff time, staff resources, city resources, we cannot advocate for the passage, but it's very important that we provide information as to the issue item, what the impacts of it are, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there will be a community campaign that would be conducted separately, looking at, a more promotional type of format. So it's very important that folks understand, as you said, this is not an increase, it's a continuation of the current, the current tax burden. It's for critical services, and we want to make sure that folks understand that in time for May.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you. Any other question on the motion, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Engel?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We have no public hearings this evening, so we'll move on to new business. First item under new business is ordinance 2019-01, an emergency, amending ordinance 2018-28, authorizing the sale of the property located at 220 East Church Street and declaring an emergency. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Staff is recommending City Council approve this item tonight as an emergency action. It would be for a sale of, as indicated, the property that the city owns at 220 East Church Street. The property was acquired by the city a number of years ago through tax foreclosure and has sat vacant since. Last year, council authorized staff to move forward with marketing of this and various other city properties around the city with the intent of returning these properties back to private ownership and hopefully back to some type of productive use. City had previously negotiated a sale for the property at 220 East Church, and council did authorize the sale of that property through the aforementioned ordinance last year, but the sale did fall through prior to execution of that contract. So staff has pursued an additional alternative, and this evening we're recommending council reauthorize the sale of the property through this amended ordinance to a local partnership that plans to rehab the house and sell it as a single-family home. Which we're quite happy with. The purchasing entity, Xenia Real Estate Group, is ready to immediately close on the property as it is anxious to get into the structure and start the rehab, some mold issues and water intrusion issues, so the sooner they can get and address those, the better it is for everyone. So it's for that reason that we're recommending we approve this as an emergency tonight. That would cut, 4.5 weeks, well, closer to 6 weeks out of the process if we can approve it as an emergency this evening and allow them to get started. So staff is making that recommendation.
I suppose, Mr. President, since this is across the street from me, I have a vested interest in seeing it done as soon as possible.
So you'd like to make a motion as an emergency?
I would indeed.
Thank you very much. Motion by the Vice President. Second, please.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Councilman Dean. Discussion or question on this motion, please.
I'm planning to recuse myself as these are friends of mine and we have talked about the property. I've not been involved in any conversation about the sale, but it's come up as far as that they were interested, and I just wanted to make sure that I'm above board and note that they are friends, and I'm not gonna vote on it.
Okay, thank you. I would remind all on council, especially our newest member, as an emergency, there must be 5 affirmative votes to pass.
Right.
So if there are no other questions on the motion, I'll call for a roll, please.
Well, I'd just like to make one
Oh, sorry.
comment. I know the Phillips pretty well as well, but I've not had any discussions with them on this. But I will say that just knowing Gary's character and the work that he's done on other homes, that I think this would be a wise move and someone who really will do a great job rehabilitating this place and make it a very attractive home for someone to move into. So I think it's a very wise move, and I have great hopes that the Xenia Real Estate Group will be able to move out on this and actually accomplish this.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question, please?
Who made the motion?
I did.
Dr. Wallace, okay. Thank you.
Now seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Recuse.
President Engel?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Our next item under new business is ordinance 2019-02, an introduction, amending section 122.01E7 of the City of Xenia's Land Development Code. Councilman Dean, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. As everyone probably here knows, last meeting, Councilman Lauterbach and I directed staff to come up with a change to the setback requirement for older buildings, garages, sheds. The previous one had been 10 feet, and we requested the change to go back to the original 3 feet that it was in 2016. And so this is just a formal written down motion as required by our charter.
Thank-
or an ordinance to change.
Thank you. I'm assuming you'd like to introduce?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. Introduced by Councilman Dean.
Mr. President, did we ever get a statement from Mr. Forstner about this other than the comments that had to do with the particular request that a citizen had? Rather than have something that is just geared to that particular situation, I'd rather have a rationale for why 3 versus 5, or why 10 versus 3 in the first place, since the X plan was passed before I came on council, so I didn't participate in the discussion of it. And
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, and correct me if I'm not, are you looking for maybe a memo that would provide some guidance as to rationale, as to the setbacks and why we would do them? Is that
exactly.
sort of-
Well, I understand what setbacks are.
Right, but
And
perhaps why they arrived at this type of a setback when the code
of
was
10
changed?
feet versus 3. I mean, if I own a lot, I own it all, and I ought to be able to do with what I'd like to do.
We could certainly prepare something in time for your next meeting or in advance of your next meeting for you to take into consideration. I did have a lengthy discussion with the planner the other day, and we were talking about this topic and, the pros and cons, and is there an alternative? Is there a compromise? What would be defensible and what would make sense and, in a compromise discussion. So he and I had already been kind of discussing some of those topics and thinking about it, but we could reduce some of that to writing and could provide some perspective if that would be helpful.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
So I think to your point, what you'd like is a memo that just essentially lays out the facts of what it was, what it is now, and what guidance documents approved by council or other bodies led to a change at the 2016 mark.
I like that. And then, of course, I also believe that there are sometimes necessary exceptions to any rule, depending on the situation. And I'd like that issue addressed as well.
Say that again, so I make sure I
essentially
understand.
adding the, I believe, information that the mayor provided, that was the
Criteria
BZA's
for, yeah.
criteria, and their decision on that would be a
Exactly.
helpful addition to that memo.
Okay.
I think that would bring everybody up to speed, or certainly bring me up to speed, and put me in a position where I can make a good decision.
Okay. I think we can turn that around by a week or so.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next item we have is Resolution 2019-B, an introduction authorizing the purchase of 3 marked SUVs for annual police vehicle replacements through the state DAS Cooperative Purchasing Program, authorizing the purchase of an unmarked vehicle from Key Chrysler at an amount below state bid, and authorizing the sale of city-owned vehicles. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Item C this evening, for this item, staff is recommending actions needed to maintain our police division fleet replacement program. As discussed during the 5-year CIP as well as the budget review conversation, staff is proposing replacement of 3 marked cruisers and 1 unmarked vehicle for special operations. The 3 cruisers would be replaced with 2019 Ford Explorer Police Interceptor vehicles purchased through the DAS Cooperative Purchasing Program. These would be from Lebanon Ford, as they're the assigned bidder or the awarded bidder in that cooperative purchasing program. As always, we do try to keep purchases as local as possible, and so for this item, we're also suggesting a 4th unit that would be purchased through Key Chrysler here in Xenia, which would be a 2018 Dodge ProMaster cargo vehicle. This would be allowable under the provisions of ORC 125.04, as Key has offered a vehicle under similar terms but at a lower price point. So it allows us to get what we need here locally for that particular item. The resolution recommended this evening would authorize these purchases and additionally authorize surplusing of any vehicles that are being replaced. We would certainly look to see if those vehicles could be repurposed within other departmental fleet, if it would make sense, and if not, then we would seek some type of competitive auction process to surplus those vehicles. So this resolution would accomplish authorization of all 3 of these items in this one action.
Thank you very much. Would anyone care to introduce, please?
I will.
Introduced by Councilman Smith. Thank you. Next item is an administrative motion authorizing the city manager to execute the agreement with Motorola Solutions and Company for, or incorporated, excuse me, for maintenance and system upgrades to the city's public safety marks radio communication and radio console system. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Item D this evening is a recommendation to authorize a 4-year maintenance agreement with Motorola Solutions. This would be in the amount of $156,939 for equipment, software, and maintenance services. In 2003, Xenia, in partnership with Greene County and the other public safety agencies around our county, jointly migrated from the old system for our safety communications over to the platform with the multi-agency radio communication system under the state of Ohio, which we call MARCS. In doing so, we had to purchase and install radios and consoles that were Motorola Solutions products. And in doing so, it was necessary to make sure that we had the proper maintenance agreement in place to be able to maintain those systems. So in 2015, Council did authorize 4 years agreements with Motorola for those maintenance, technical support, and system upgrade functions. These maintenance agreements are now set to expire, but it is important that we have that capacity available to us, that if we have a problem, we have those maintenance services available. And so as the agenda report points out, this would be a 4-year agreement that would extend those services at that price point of $156,939 over that period. This will allow us to make sure that we have uninterrupted and supported 911 and safety communication services. So we recommend Council take this into consideration.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion, please, to approve this?
So moved.
Moved by the Vice President. Second, please. I'll second. Any discussion or question on the motion, please? Just as a general question, how reliable has the MARC system been for the purposes of council's information as well as the public?
Yeah, I think overall the system transition has been good. I think it's been beneficial. I think we are starting to see some of what we feared, which is that one of the, I'll say, hooks that that was a part of the deal to convince all of us to move in this direction was we were often basically offered stipends to reduce the per radio charge that we have as part of that MARC system. Those now have either started to go away or are going away entirely. So our costs are going to start going up. In fact, they already have in these last 2 fiscal years. So this is tens of thousands of dollars per year in additional licensing costs to be part of that system. So now now we're starting to feel the full impact of that. So from a financial perspective, I mean, it's not great, but from a service delivery perspective, it is a reliable system and does, I think, promote the interagency operability that everyone had hoped it would.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion?
I'd like to just see what the chief has to say, since he's with us tonight.
I would just reiterate what the city manager said. In terms of uptime, the uptime's been unbelievable with this system. The redundancy is such that we've never had a complete failure. There are times when certain components of it go down. The nice thing is I get an email from the state saying, hey, this component went down, we've got a team on the way, and then I get an email that says, okay, that's been repaired and we're back up. And as opposed to my people having to find those resources and get people out and be there to do those things, the state is taking care of all of it. So yeah, while there's a fee there and that fee will start ramping up, there's also some legislation to reduce that fee. So we're kind of hoping we end up meeting in the middle and it ends up being a reasonable cost per year for those radios. But the system overall is very reliable. We have almost no dead spots in the city with our old system. There were some dead spots, so we're very happy with the coverage. Interoperability for emergencies and that kind of stuff. Anybody in this county can talk. Dayton's system is up now, so we can talk with most of Dayton directly, and and we have talk groups that overlap. So it's, as somebody who was against this originally and had to be sold on it, I'm actually very happy with the system.
So a wise investment.
Yes.
As long as that cost doesn't increase a whole lot more.
But we did hear the chief say that there's some proposal to mitigate that cost some, so.
Yeah. Yeah, because we're not the only one on the MARC systems that's paying that per cost per month per radio, and so there's a lot of pressure on legislatures to pick up that cost. So I expect to see that happen.
Thank you, Chief. Any other discussion or question, please?
And we don't need to do anything to rush this. We just need to let it go.
Just let it
Let it flow, let it flow. Let it flow.
Seeing no other questions, roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Engel?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Our next item is also an administrative motion appointing volunteers to the Traffic Commission and Board of Zoning Appeals. Mayor Mays, Councilman Dean, please.
Oh, thank you. We would like to appoint Mr. Rick Hilliard. He's expressed an interest in being appointed to the BZA, and I've discussed this opportunity with Mr. Hilliard at length, and I would like to recommend him for the appointment to the board to fill the vacant term expiring on April 11th, 2019. His background check has been satisfactorily completed.
Expiring April of 2019?
Yes, that is the current seat that's
I see.
open.
So it will be a short term.
Correct.
Okay,
Just trying it on for size.
sounds good.
Thank you. I had a conversation with Mr. Jerry Mangelli. He was interested in joining the Traffic Commission, and as always, we're always looking for volunteers. So he seemed interested, and his credentials were good. So his background check was also completed satisfactorily, and he's being appointed to a term that is expiring on October 12th, 2022.
Thank you. So we have a motion from, I'll just read from left to right, Mayor Mays, and seconded by Councilman Dean to appoint these two gentlemen to the respective boards. Any discussion or question on the motion, please?
I'd just like to say that I've spoken to Jerry or Rick about either of these positions, but I know both of them very well, and both are just outstanding men. Jerry's a Air Force veteran and is committed to living here in the city and supporting it, and both Jerry and Rick have done a great job with their own homes and interacting with their own folks in their community areas and stuff, and both are dedicating a lot of service time already to the community. So I think both of these men would be just a great addition to us.
Thank you very much. Any other discussion or question, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Walls?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Hi.
President Engel?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Our next item is an administrative motion, the 2019 Board and Commission assignments. And I will read that into the record. So for,
Do we have copies of that yet? I don't.
terribly sorry. Michelle gave me a pile of things, and I didn't realize that I was to be distributing them as well.
That's all guessing.
Just trust me on this one.
That's disturbing.
So the summary of this is, at the second council meeting of each year, the council president recommends for approval various board, commission, and committee assignments. Other assignments are made by the council president and do not require council approval. Therefore, I respectfully request the appointments in the recommendations below and assign the mayor and council members to various boards, commissions, committees as follows. The Budget Review Committee will be attended by myself, Michael D. Engel, Councilman Will Urschel, Councilman Dale Lauterbach. The Greene County Career Center's Health Science Academy Advisory Board will be Councilman Will Urschel. The Greene County Emergency Preparedness Committee will be myself, the President, Michael D. Engel. The Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission, the representative and alternate will be respectively Councilman Dale Lauterbach and Councilman Levi Dean. The Pretreatment Review Committee will be Councilman Smith. The Stormwater Advisory Committee will be composed of Councilman Dale Lauterbach, Councilman Wesley Smith, Councilman Will Urschel. The Tax Incentive Review Council will be Councilman Smith. The Wellhead Protection Committee will be Councilman Dale Lauterbach, Councilman Will Urschel. And then follows the recommendations, making the following 2019 Board Commission Committee assignments as follows. Board for Recreation, Arts, and Cultural Activities, I, the President, Michael D. Engel, will chair that. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a term that is appointed for the length of the person's office, and that goes to our mayor. The Loan Trust Fund Committee, chairperson will be Councilman Dale Lauterbach, and vice chairperson, Councilman Will Urschel. The Planning and Zoning Commission chair will be Councilman Wesley Smith. The Traffic Commission chair will be Councilman Levi Dean. The Economic Development Advisory Board chair will be Councilman Dr. Edgar Wallace. These are the items that I submit respectively and make a motion that we approve them. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Smith. Any discussion or question on this motion, please?
Mr. President?
Yes.
If I may, wanted to point out that the law director and I have had some discussion about three of these committees, the wellhead protection, the stormwater review, and the industrial pretreatment. And the only one of these currently that's identified in our code is the pretreatment. And we are thinking that there's some contextual overlap among these, and we are likely to return back later this spring with a recommendation for consolidation of these into a utilities committee, as a permanent standing committee, and put it into the code. So you'll notice that among these three committees, the recommendation does include some overlaps, that those three members would be consolidated under one unified committee later. And it is important, council has given us a directive on the stormwater issue to begin looking at the full scope of need in that utility and to talk about funding. So that particular committee, we will be seeking to initiate immediately. But again, we're looking at consolidating those three, but just wanted to give you a heads up on kind of what the strategy may be for that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or question, please?
I had one question.
Yes.
I'm not seeing the Charter Review Committee, or am I overlooking it?
Well, the Charter Review Committee isn't a council committee. That's made up of 2 members of council and then 3, we set it from 5 to 11 members of the public. So that's something we've talked about, and working with the clerk, we'll have to advertise for that to see who from the public we can get that's interested.
We had it on this list last year, though, if I remember correctly.
You had something, there is something in the codified ordinances about a council appointed, but now that the public has adopted as part of the charter, a charter review commission, we will have you appoint a commission
Okay.
here in the near future.
Thank you. Any other discussion or question, please? Seeing none, roll call.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Engel?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. And our final item under new business this evening is an administrative motion approving the schedule of bills in the amount of $652,494.66. Mr. Finance Director.
I have nothing to note on the bills this evening.
Thank you. Motion to pay our bills this evening, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by the mayor, seconded by Councilman Smith. I thought for a moment no one wanted to pay bills. Any discussion or question over the bills, please?
I've always wanted to see if we could get the finance director to take care of them personally.
You can make that motion. Seeing no questions, roll call, please.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye, sir.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Engel?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. This time we have an opportunity for reports of committees. First one is mayor and managers. Mayor Mays or Mr. City Manager?
I'll take it tonight. Our last meeting was in Vandalia, and there was no business meeting, but we did have a presentation from, forgive me, Patrick Trumbull. He's Montgomery County's Director of Environmental Services. And we talked specifically about recycling. He focused in somewhat on the documentary China Sword, and talked a lot about how China's policy is refining. They're beginning to really refine what they accept for recycling, which is causing, we can export less, costs are getting higher, the value per ton is down. There's a lot more contamination in recycling that they're struggling to keep up with. Plastic is becoming an issue. And so they said you can expect some changes to come, which will affect costs. There will probably begin to be audits. This is a nationwide issue. They talked about you can start to expect spot checks and recycling at some point down the road. And that is it.
Thank you very much. Any question for mayors and managers? The mayor or city manager, please. Second item would have been a report by Councilman Lauterbach, but since he is absent this evening, we will reschedule that.
Mr. President, do we need to move to excuse him since we haven't done that yet?
Has anyone received a request from Councilman Lauterbach to be
No,
excused? I'm
I
unaware of
actually did.
his.
Yeah, I completely forgot, sorry. I was actually gonna probably do it at the end, but. We can do it
So you
now.
have a motion to
Yeah,
excuse
I'd like to
Councilman
make a
Lauterbach?
motion to excuse Councilman Lauterbach.
Second, please.
I'll second it.
Seconded by the Vice President. Discussion or question, please. Roll call.
Vice President Wallace,
Aye.
Councilman Herschel,
Aye.
Councilman Smith,
Aye.
Councilman Dean,
Aye.
Mayor Mays.
Aye.
President Engel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We had an opportunity for comments from appointed officials and council comments. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, sir. Just one thing I wanted to speak to tonight, a couple items under one general heading, which is our winter weather response. Even this afternoon, we had crews back out on the streets about 3, 4 o'clock, putting salt down citywide. The refreeze here this afternoon from some of the previous melting created some pretty slick conditions, so we had a number of accidents, so we did have crews out this afternoon salting again. Just wanted to give some perspective on our response and then some reminders to our public. These past 2 weekend events, really 4 days of treatment. Citywide, we spent more than $100,000 in total expenses. That includes manpower, materials, and repairs on equipment. This does not include additional work that we had, particularly this past weekend, relative to, we had 3 water main breaks, and with all of the significant precipitation that we got, and then the melting with the warming that we had some pretty significant sanitary sewer flow issues, so we had crews out literally till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning last night with our vac truck, making sure that our pump stations were not overwhelmed. So the weather in multiple forms is really creating a significant expense issue for us, and something we will have to watch closely. Our guys have done a great job so far this year. They've taken great pride. We've, I think, had a better response to these 2 big events than prior years, and I'm very, very proud of the guys for their efforts. We have staff members that are going on 20 straight days of work, 2 weekends in a row, the holiday included. So they're pretty tired and beleaguered, but they continue their best efforts. We wanted to make 2 points to remind our public. One is that we strongly encourage folks to avoid parking on the roadway when there is snow in the forecast. Obviously, if you have nowhere else to park and you have no choice, we certainly understand that, but it makes it exponentially more difficult to clear snow. Our goal when we get to the neighborhoods is to be able to clear the snow from curb to curb. And when you have cars parked on both sides, we have this sort of zigzag, and it just dramatically reduces the effectiveness of what we can do in removing the material. And in often cases, you're gonna get your car kind of plowed in as well. So we strongly encourage, even if it's just for that day when the snow's falling, get your car in a driveway somewhere off the street. It really improves what we can do. And then second, we remind folks that when we remove the snow from the streets, it's going somewhere. And unfortunately, that means it is being pushed to the side of the roads, the curbs. Oftentimes, it's going to increase the volume of snow in your driveway apron, up by your mailbox. We get a lot of complaints about this. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. We are, as expediently as possible, removing that snow from the street, and it's got to go somewhere. So again, we know it creates an inconvenience. I shoveled a foot of snow at the end of my driveway here a couple times in the past 2 weeks. So we apologize, but there's not a whole lot we can do that. We do encourage folks to shovel around fire hydrants and try to keep your storm drains as clear as possible. These are just conveniences to you, safety considerations for your property, so we encourage folks to do that. And finally, looking ahead, the forecast, the 10-day forecast is not great. We have a chance for accumulating snow here this weekend, not a lot, but a little bit. Temperatures are about to take a nosedive next week, so potentially dangerously cold weather. With a very saturated ground right now, if we get that deep freeze, it is likely we will have some significant water main issues. In fact, we have crews out on a water main break as we speak right now. So anticipate that condition could get a little worse. So we're doing our best to stay on top of it, but we are limited. For example, these past 2 weeks, we had our entire crew out both Saturday, Sunday. So we're kind of at max capacity, and these are costly services, but we're doing our best to stay on top of it. So just wanted to pass along that report and those reminders to our citizens. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Anything for our city manager, please? I would echo my thanks. I was actually very, very impressed with the snow, excuse me, removal that took place after both of the major events. I live quite a ways back in one of the subdivisions, but that very first day, the crews were back there after treating all the main roadways first, as they should. So kudos to our crew, and appreciate your reminder to us and to all that they have been on for quite a few days straight, and will continue to do so as required to provide safety for us. Thank you. Mr. Finance Director.
Thank you, Council President. A couple of things to note this evening. Believe it or not, we are already back into tax filing season. The city actually distributing W-2s this week. I want to remind the public that it is not too early to go ahead and file your taxes. Again, this year, like others, the city staff is here and able to help assist you in preparation of your tax return. So go ahead and beat the rush and bring it in here as soon as you have all your information, and we can assist you in filing your return. Also, we have updated the city website budget and finance page with all the 2018 financial data. So encourage people who have an interest in how the dollars are being spent to go out to the website and check out that page. A lot of good information on there. One thing that I think is worth noting that we've talked a lot about over the last year is streets. In 2018, a total of $3.2 million was spent on city streets. 1.9 million of that was grant funding, and 1.3 million city expenses. So the city exceeded by a significant margin the $500,000 that was committed to be spent. Council made some decisions to move money from some other areas and prioritize streets, and so there was a significant amount of money spent on streets. Obviously, that number and that level of investment is not sustainable into the future without additional resources being made available. But certainly for 2018, a significant investment was made in the streets. So,
Thank you. Anything for our Finance Director, please?
Yeah, it's okay. I had a question. Would it be possible, I know everyone knows about the government shutdown, would it be possible for us to postpone utility bill payments for the employees affected by that?
well, I would assume, I mean, there are a lot of things that are possible. I would think that there would need to be some sort of ordinance or action taken by council that would amend the rules and the fee schedule. I mean,
That's now dictated by state law.
Oh, okay.
When they did Senate Bill 5 a couple years ago, you can't collect
Well-
income tax unless you follow those state guidelines.
your question was
Utility.
specific to utility billing.
Yeah,
though, right?
I know
Not-
that
Utility
the
bill.
taxes, we
Yeah,
can't,
you said
we can't do anything with
So-
that, I know that.
I think that there's the possibility that that could be done. From an administrative standpoint, I'm not sure how easy that would be to actually do, but something we could take a look at if council would desire that we try to look at some sort of exception. I don't know in the end how much assistance that would be, because obviously at some point the bill's gonna be due and you're gonna have a larger amount that's due at
Right.
that point, but
If I could chime in on that, since I'm a little bit in the know on the government shutdown, a couple of points relevant to this. One, it is not affecting any of the DOD employees, which make up the vast majority of federal employees in the Dayton region and probably the Xenia region as well. So you would be looking at a much smaller subset of people, albeit still something to consider. I've actually seen that another municipality has proposed the same thing as what Councilman Dean is suggesting. We would need to find some way to verify their other than DOD employment to accomplish that. Probably best done by, if council were desirous to do that, then setting up some kind of arrangement for a personal visit with verification documents to the finance director of such employment. And then the remaining one being, to the best of my knowledge, both the president and Congress have passed legislation that will, to your point, the larger bill due later, federal employees will be compensated for the entirety of time that they are furloughed. Such that to this point, it may be advantageous for us to consider such a maneuver.
yeah, so I mean, our billing process is really governed by the rules and regs. If council would want to make a motion to allow some postponement of the bill that's due until after the shutdown has ended, we certainly can figure out a way to make that work. To your point, there would need to be some process for them proving
Federal
they're
employment
impacted
other than
by the shutdown, it's something that we could certainly make
Could that
work.
just be addressed on a one-on-one basis with
That's actually what I was
utilities
suggesting.
department? I think that wouldn't be a huge amount of.
My suggestion would be, we could look at drafting something with the law director, that would be, I would suggest a time limited, we attach it somehow to the, to the, temporary shutdown, but my suggestion would be that you add some type of addition to the rules and regulations, simply because that's the document that we go by in governing all of our collection systems, and, to me, that there's some degree of formality that would be beneficial.
The only downside to waiting is that our billing cycle, the bill is due before the next council meeting, before there would be another opportunity to take action. Now, it's not like we run off and shut people off the next day, so if they're unable to pay, they're not gonna be impacted, but some of those folks, they're gonna wanna meet the billing deadline. So that, I guess that's the only thing that's a little difficult to navigate, is that before the due date, if we wait until another council meeting, we'll be beyond that due date before any other action would be taken.
I would prefer that the council provide some direction to the administration, since the policies for this government are supposed to be promulgated by us, rather than just saying, take care of the folk. And we know we do that too, but I would like to see us do something. I do know that IRS is impacted by this shutdown, because I've been trying to get them on the phone for 3 weeks and can't get them on the phone. It's hard before the shutdown. It's impossible now. So I think if Mr. Dean would like to make his suggestion a motion, I'll be happy to second it and let them figure out how we're going to implement it.
Just like to make one comment. Councilman Dean, I get the sympathy there, but so the IRS, it's the Department of Treasury and Department of Homeland Security that are not funded at this time. The rest of the appropriation.
It's eight.
Well, I know,
different.
right, but those are the appropriation groups, and there were various organizations underneath there. The reality is, we may have 10 folks in the city, if that might be affected. I'm not saying we shouldn't, be sensitive to that, but this is a lot different from the last shutdown, where it affected all federal employees across the board, and also all retirees are getting their pay as well at this point, and that was not true during the last shutdown as well too. So all I say is, I think we're looking back at the last shutdown. We understand there was a significant impact to our citizenry. I just since the IRS regional office is centered in Cincinnati, I doubt we have anybody in the city of Xenia who's commuting to Cincinnati to man that office, and knowing that in terms of Homeland Security, our only footprint here in this area might be TSA workers at the Dayton Airport, but outside of that, we really don't have Homeland Security folks in this area. But we could make that motion, but just realize that that's a very small percentage of our folks here that might be affected by that.
Have you received any communication from anyone expressing difficulties?
I'm not aware of any. It's possible that some have called into the utility billing office, and I haven't been made aware of it, but I'm not aware of any requests. I do know we're trying to look up the ordinance here on the fly. It's really, the time frame for shut-off is specified in the ordinance.
Okay.
We wouldn't be past shut-off before the next meeting in order to make some sort of amendment, but there's really not a way necessarily, I don't think there's a way to amend the date that's due via motion, because it's all codified in the ordinance.
Yeah, to that point, as we're chatting here, looking at the ordinance, I think the concern that we would have, we would be a little bit remiss if we advised you to move forward with a simple motion, because it has these rules and regulations, and this issue on non-payment specifically is codified in the ordinance itself. So you really need an amendment ordinance to amend that. And short of doing that, I think you'd maybe be heading down a road that, not to say you shouldn't do it, I'm just suggesting maybe you shouldn't do it tonight.
What I would suggest of the body is that we consider asking the finance director, law director, and city manager to study the issue, determine what way forward is possible, and bring it back to our attention at your earliest convenience before our next meeting, so we can look at it and consider. Also, is there, my final question, sorry for belaboring this point, do we have any way through our records of searching for federal employees that are non-DOD, that are
Well,
on our roll?
so I believe through on the .gov sites, we could identify on a per county basis who's employed within each of the different departments, and at least get a sense of that. I think one other thing that would be helpful is if the folks in utility billing could give us any feedback, if there are folks that are
Yes.
talking about
That's what I
this.
was gonna say. Could we ask people to self-identify at this point to see if there is any feedback?
Right.
Sure.
Even if
What
we
the need
can't
is.
change anything at this point, could it, if somebody is being affected by this in our community, to call and let us know so
Sure.
that we actually know
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
there is a few people being affected. If we could ask for some self-identification, that would be very helpful for the
Certainly,
community.
if folks want to call into utility billing and let them know that the shutdown is creating an issue, then they can document that, and we'll certainly make note of it on the account. I'll touch base with utility billing in the morning and see if they have gotten any of that feedback so far. And what I can tell you is, because of the way that the shutoffs work, no one is going to be impacted and shut off as a result of not payment for this next bill prior to council meeting again. So I think we do have some time before they're actually impacted by not payment before the next meeting.
And to the finance director's point, the city manager, I think, would have some discretion as it applies to the latitude we could offer for those turnoffs. Those, once we have the notices established. I think that's another point, that if we're getting feedback from the finance department, from folks who have self-reported, we can remove them from the list. I think we have the administrative discretion to do that.
So I am reassured then at what I suggested. I would suggest that we as a body just ask them to study the issue, provide us literally the facts.
And add the last thing that he just suggested, that the city manager
Yes.
be compassionate.
That gets me in trouble in this job, unfortunately. No, but we can definitely come back with something, study the issue a little bit. Again, a council would have the prerogative to, you can waive late fees and reconnect fees and things like that, as part of whatever language you would adopt in addressing this here in 2 weeks.
But you're gonna be bringing that to us, so that's
Thank you.
fine with me.
Also, is there any way we could set it up for the future too? Because I doubt this will be the last economic shutdown we ever have.
We can look at perhaps even some language that would, on an emergent basis, by motion maybe, or, grant some administrative authorities to us. I mean, we can look at it creatively to see what could be done.
Thank you.
The rules are fairly rigid right now, and the purpose is to establish that bureaucracy so that we treat like cases alike and different cases differently. But I would even tell you that even within our existing system now, that, there are a lot of people who try to take advantage of wherever they can. So we do try to follow those rules as closely as possible.
Provide us a thorough study of what it is, and we will certainly take that into consideration. Thank you very much. Anything else for our city manager this evening, please?
I think there's only 4 things that are sure in life. It's death, taxes, your water will be turned off in Xenia if you don't pay your bill. And if you don't file your income tax form, even if you paid your income tax, it's still a misdemeanor. We know all those things are sure.
So written.
As I speak from personal experience.
Anything else for our finance director, please? Madam Law Director,
I have nothing this evening, thank you.
don't want to try to top that, huh?
I'm not gonna try and talk that.
Thank you very much. Anything for our law director, finance director, or city manager? Last call. Thank you. We'll move to the mayor.
Thank you, sir. It's been a quiet couple of weeks, so I'll just take this opportunity to piggyback on what our city manager said and thank our public service department and their hard work and the efforts they have put in. I have noticed it as well, and I'm very grateful for their efforts. And I also want to mention that the Martin Luther King Jr. service, the community service, was excellent, and if you missed it, then you missed out. I want to thank Councilman Wallace specifically because you put a lot of effort into planning that service. And it was very well done, and it reflected your efforts and your heart. So thank you, sir, for what you did.
Thank
And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. We'll start over here. Councilman Smith.
Thank you very much. I too would like to thank Public Service Department for the hard work that they've been doing, keeping our streets clear to snow, keeping people safe. And I echo on your comments. A lot of times you can navigate through the streets and you think, man, if that car had been moved out of the way, that'd be so much nicer. And we get it. We understand it's hard to move your car sometimes. You might be out of town when that snow hits, but just try to do that if you can. Also like to acknowledge Councilman Scrivens is in our audience tonight. Thanks for being here and your support for the city. And just a reminder, with the cold weather, check on your elderly neighbors as often as you can, and check for activity. Make sure you reach out to them if you can. I know a lot of elderly people, they don't embrace technology, even cell phones. And they have landlines, that type of thing. But check on them if you can. Find an excuse to visit them and make sure that they're okay. And I'll tell you what, the activity around the YMCA is just phenomenal. I just continue to think up above. That's just a wonderful blessing for our community. Senior Citizen Center, saw pictures. It's just packed there, and just really proud to have that in our community. And I know that they're looking forward to doing more outdoors when the weather's nicer, and I'm just really thankful for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilman Urschel.
I just want to tell each of the directors my thanks for, had a great session week before last with them and with their personnel, and just very enlightening time during the day to go through that. And I just appreciate each of your staff. Everybody was busy, and just taking the time out to spend with me was extremely helpful. One thing looking at the 5-year plan and speaking to each of the directors, it's obvious that there's a lot of thought has been put into a broader direction for the city to be going, and strategies to ensure that our city remains vibrant in the future. But I guess as a new council member, it's not clear to me how we're able to meet currently as a council with our directors and have discussions specifically on these more strategic topics versus the tactical. And a lot of the things that we do here day to day during our council meetings are very tactical. They're necessary, but we don't, and this is a hard thing during these time periods, to really set those things aside. Most organizations I've been with have some regular battle rhythm of meeting to not talk about any of the tactical issues, but being able to meet on some of the more strategic issues. So I just like to say I think I'd like to recommend Councilman Chair Engel that we consider in the future having some sort of regular sessions with the directors to be able to accomplish this. Understand under the sunshine rules, this would be open to the public, which is fine, but to not do any of the day-to-day type of business, but be able to step back and have these discussions. I think it would be healthy for the directors to hear directly from us at the council and make sure that we're all on the same page to be able to do that. So that was just one recommendation I have coming out of those meetings.
Thank you. Ms. City Manager, would you speak to a couple of the things that we have done in prior years that I think begin to address that, but perhaps not to the fullest extent?
Yeah, we have had some discussion about increasing the frequency of some smaller scale meetings that would be slightly more intimate, more focused on broader policy issues rather than some of the specific minutia that oftentimes has to come, as you suggested, Councilman, here to the meeting. That is, I would tell you right off, I would thoroughly suggest it. I think the staff would very much derive value out of opportunities to sit and talk about the big picture objectives that council has, the direction and visioning issues. To that point as well, last week I did forward an email to the council president, vice president, and mayor as council leadership. After some discussion with my colleagues to the right here, we feel like a retreat visioning session would be very appropriate at this point. Would be instructive as we begin to look at updates to our X-plan, our comprehensive plan for the community. And I would further suggest that we look at bringing someone externally in to help facilitate that, so there's some objectivity From the staff's perspective, it's not us leading you down the rabbit hole, but rather the group's, consciousness of what you want to do. And I would urge that yet this quarter. I think it would be very, very beneficial. And that could be a venue where the council, really establishes policy moving forward on how you want to proceed with some of these, as you talked about, more strategic, regular strategic conversations on the bigger picture issues.
Very good.
Great. And I just one other comment. Coming out of the discussion, so I just wanted to commend Cody for coming and speaking to us. That's it's a different situation to be down there at that podium than up here. Two different environments completely. So I'll just anybody that could take the time to want to do that is a great thing. But coming at all this, I've spent a lot of time trying to understand our land development code, the constraints within this. And once again, this is an important business because we are determining the laws that we live by within the context of our city here, and they affect all 28,000 residents of our city within the context of that. So I don't take lightly any changes to our laws or the appeal process or those types of things. I'll say that I think there's a balance that we bear in terms of personal liberty within a person's own property and what they may do, and then also the infringement on the liberty of his neighbors. And we're in a different situation than being in the townships. It's a lot different when you're living on fifth of an acre lots versus 5 acre lots out in the townships, and activities that go on within a very a lot that has a frontage and I guess our R1, which is 60 feet by 120. That's a very small lot size, and so many times what goes on and we allow a neighbor to do does not just impact that neighbor. It may have a fairly significant impact on or that individual owns that property may have a fairly significant impact. So I just want to say that I've been doing a lot of research on that, trying to understand that, reading in urban planning documents and recommendations, looking what's been going on within the other cities and townships, not only within our county, but some other areas too. I'm looking forward to when this is being brought to the Planning and Zoning Commission and having the public comments on it at that time. I guess I just had one question to our law director. Do we as council members have an opportunity to attend those, and are we allowed to participate in those, or are we just observers of those at that? If we're not a council member on the Planning and Zoning Commission, can we go and participate in the discussion as a resident of the city?
As a resident of the city, absolutely.
Okay, great. And I guess my understanding is that we will be getting a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission on this motion that will be coming back to us as well at the next council meeting. So, okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Dean.
I think I've taken up enough time tonight.
Mr. Vice President.
Well, I too would like to express to everyone that failed to come to the Martin Luther King service that you missed a treat, including the mayor singing and playing. And I would like to thank Jared for coming up and let me know that he was there, and I got a chance to introduce him to my wife. It was special. And I think unfortunately, we don't have figures for recent services, but it looked like we had better attendance this time, in spite of the weather, than we have had in recent times, and it was mighty special. I think that Reverend Pastor Dan Jordan did a superb job of exegeting John 3:1-18.
Yes.
A long scripture, but it was excellent, well done, just absolutely well serviced. And Bob Colliner does miracles with a few people who like to sing every time. This was the 4th time in 4 years, and we only had two practices, but you wouldn't know it by hearing the choir sing. It was just great. And I would like to thank everybody who participated in any way at all, because it was very especially, and certainly Pastor Chapman and the folks from Zion Baptist for hosting us. But that's really all I have. Thanks for all the work that you do. Well, and of course, the public safety folks have done just a marvelous job. I don't know how many times I saw them go down the street on each Saturday night, but they've just done a great job around the city, period. Nobody has been held up because they didn't do their job. They're doing it well. And thank you, and thank them. Thank you.
Thank you. The only item I have is just essentially what's been already said by many. Thanks to obviously all of our public service workers, all our safety workers, and those people, especially on staff, that are behind the scenes that make that happen. And just to ask for everyone's patience and caution as we proceed through the winter that appears to be living up to, was at the Old Farmer's Almanac, that we will have a snowy and cold winter. Please take your time on the roads. Nothing is worth getting into an accident and possibly becoming injured or worse. So with that, I have nothing else for this evening. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Smith. Second, please.
Second.
Seconded by the Vice President. Roll call.
Vice President Wallace?
Aye.
Councilman Urschel?
Aye.
Councilman Smith?
Aye.
Councilman Dean?
Aye.
Mayor Mays?
Aye.
President Engel?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.